Hello and welcome to another edition of Political Insider. I'm your host, Herald-Tribune political editor Zac Anderson. With me today is Joe Gruters, the co-chairman of Donald Trump's Florida campaign. Joe, thanks again for being here.
Thank you, Zac.
Always good to see you. So, huge win for your guy this week in Florida. The polls showed him with a comfortable lead heading into the election, but I think a lot of people were still really surprised at what a blowout it was in the state. He won 66 of 67 counties in Marco Rubio's home state. I'm going to let you gloat here for a minute. What was the most impressive aspect of this victory in your mind?
Well, exactly that. 66 out of 67 counties, really almost unexpected, even on our side.
Yeah.
You know, just an absolutely incredible victory, you know, to be able to win by that margin in one of the most important states in the country politically because of its diverse economic, geographic backgrounds, because of its importance in the national campaign in November, and the fact that we were going against a U.S. senator from this state. But at the end of the day, to give Donald Trump credit, he is almost like a Floridian. You know, he's invested tens of millions of dollars in businesses in Florida. He's employed thousands of people. He made 2 visits to the Sarasota over the years to our local Republican Party.
Statesman of the Year.
Statesman of the Year awards. And he's been to other Republican parties across the state. So he's laid the groundwork.
Right.
He's like a Floridian, so it's almost like his home state. But what I think it shows is I think that the momentum that Trump has been able to build since the start of this campaign, it's really getting to a point now to where it's almost like I don't think there's anything that could stop him. He's going to be our nominee, and he's going to be our next president.
And a lot of people have talked about Trump doing better with certain types of voters, with white voters, with lower income voters. In Florida, he did well with all voters. You know, he won in voters that earned more than $100,000 a year. He won voters with college degrees. He won voters at all age levels. He won men. He won women. The only segment, demographic group that Rubio won was Hispanics. What does that sort of wide demographic win say in your mind?
Well, what it shows you is he's not a candidate that's pigeonholed to one segment of the population. So he's not a super conservative. He's not a moderate. But what's interesting is he gets the same percentage of both moderates and super conservatives.
Yeah, he won Sarasota County, which is a little bit more of a moderate county, Pinellas County, Broward County, these moderate coastal counties, but he also won in super conservative areas in the Panhandle in Central Florida.
Yeah, it is exciting because what's going to happen is he's going to be able to build on this. And like I've said all along, is I think Donald Trump is the only candidate that has the ability to expand our tent. And he's going to be able to bring more people in. And like I said, he takes just as many votes from the moderates as he does from the super conservatives. And I think in the general election, I think what you're going to see is you're going to see him start taking a lot more of the maybe some soft Democrats and maybe even some liberal votes because of people that are tired of the failed policies that we've seen over the last 8 years. People want to change, and here you go. Donald Trump is ready to offer that change to these voters.
Now, despite this dominance, there's still a lot of questions about Trump's campaign. A lot of people still think that he could be a relatively weak general election candidate. And one reason is because he continues to say things that are pretty controversial. Most recently, he said that if he gets denied the nomination at a contested convention, that there could be riots. Some people heard that and said he's condoning violence.
There will be riots.
Well, tell me why that. I mean, a riot in a political event, I mean, that is... For him to say that, doesn't that condone violence? Isn't that something that a major party candidate should avoid? Why shouldn't people be disturbed by that?
What's going on here is you're seeing these political elites around this country. They can't stand the fact that Donald Trump is winning.
Yeah.
They're so used to controlling everything, and they think that, oh yeah, well, first it was Bush. Bush is there's no way Trump's going to win. Don't even recognize him as a candidate. He's like a sideshow. And he'll eventually go away. He's not going away. He starts winning. Jeb leaves, and they all say, okay, we got to find somebody else.
Yeah.
Then they go to Rubio, and they think, oh, well, Rubio will win. And now they say, well, brokered convention. And they keep on trying to put everything into the box because they think they can control it. But the problem is the voters are speaking.
Right.
And what's going to happen is if we end up going to the convention with 40, 45, 48%, not the majority, but the plurality of the votes, and they try to deny Trump the nomination, people will be furious. You'll never see it, and there will be riots. I actually think that it will be it will be the end of the Republican Party if they deny Donald Trump the nomination.
But this has happened in the past, you know. I mean, it happened when Abraham Lincoln became president. It's happened on the Democrat and the Republican side. If you don't get a majority, the rules say that it's an open convention. And, you know, then the delegates are up for grab and you have votes. Why isn't this part of the democratic process? Why is there going to be riots when this is part of the democratic process?
If you deny the people, if you deny the popular vote, the people in the Republican primary.
But he's not getting a majority. We're assuming he's not getting a majority.
Because there were 16 candidates to begin with. So he's had to slay all these other candidates. Now they're down to 3. Ted Cruz I think he has to get 87% of the delegates remaining to win. And then Kasich, there's no mathematical way for him to even be considered. These guys should drop out of the race, coalesce. Governor Scott was right. The day after the election, Governor Scott came out and said, listen, the people have spoken. We need to get behind Trump. He's going to be our nominee. It's time to focus on the real challenge, and that's November. Because the question is do we want another 8 years of Barack Obama's failed policies? And do we want somebody like Hillary Clinton, who certainly failed us in Benghazi and couldn't even protect 4 American heroes, trying to protect every day? And that's why I think Donald Trump appeals to the average person, is I think people think that he will keep them safe. He is going to protect American jobs. He's going to be like our great governor, Rick Scott, and going to be a great jobs president.
You mentioned Rick Scott. That was another good piece of news for Trump this week. He received the endorsement of Governor Scott. He received the endorsement of Attorney General Pam Bondi. He's going to need to coalesce these, the top tier of the party, the whole party behind him if he's going to win in November. So far, though, even though Bondi and Scott have come out in favor of him, most establishment Republicans have not at this point. Does it worry you that a lot of the Republican elite still seems to be unwilling to associate themselves with Trump?
Absolutely not. And because just like we were talking about before, I think so many of these establishment and these politicos that have been in office for a long time, they just imagine that it would be Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, John Kasich, one of these other candidates, and they're sitting in disbelief as Donald Trump is steamrolling their candidates. He's actually just basically kicking them in the teeth, and they're seeing their friends get their butts kicked, and they're thinking to themselves, what's going on? And so what I think...
So you think it's just sore feelings? Yes. You don't think that they really have some serious issues with Trump?
Well, I think at the end of the day, there's always going to be bruises in a primary. Yeah. I think that Donald Trump is going to have to reach out and be a uniter. I think he can bring people together. I think people will coalesce around him as the nominee. But it's going to take some time. And yes, there's some people that always are going to have their reservations with some things that Trump has said. But at the end of the day, listen, this is obviously what the people want. He's winning. He won Florida, I think, with 47% of the vote. And I think what you're going to start seeing now that Rubio's out, I think you're start seeing him. Because remember, just 2 months ago, they said, he's going to max out at 20%, 25%. He's never going to go above there. 75% of the Republicans will not vote for him. And then Christie leaves, and then the next candidate leaves. And as all these candidates, as the field is narrowing, he's continuing to pick up more and more of these votes. So the original thought of the establishment is, 75% of the people will never vote for Trump in the primary. Well, they're obviously wrong because as these candidates
in
and
Florida, 46%. So
there you go. So obviously. So I think he'll continue to build. People like winners. He's a winner. He brings us optimism, and people want to see America win again. And he's certainly, people definitely want the wall built by Mexico. I mean, there's no question about that.
Well, he definitely had a lot of support here in Florida on election night. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens if we have a brokered convention. Obviously, there's still a lot left to come here. So we'll check in with you again soon.
Anytime. Thanks so much for the invite, Zach.
Great to see you. Thank you again for joining us for another edition of Political Insider. Please tune in again next week.